This is on fear, isolation, and social justice. I think a lot of people in the last US election really admired Stacey Abrams for the work that she did in more fair voter registration and in her work on the structure and how she had lost the bid for governor, and then she really went to work at really seeing what she could do for the election. And her book, I haven't actually read her whole book yet, I've got it. But just to be really clear that when something is broken, we can't just ignore it. And we see this in families. A lot of the work that we do around trauma is our own individual experience in families. And in my family, like many others, everybody pretended everything was fine. And if you don't name it, it's not happening. And that seems to be, a problem collectively as well. So her work just has been really inspiring in terms of things are broken and we can get together as people and citizens and do something about what's broken. And then 2 weeks ago, when we had the Roe v. Wade was overturned by the Supreme Court, and last week the environmental protections were gutted as well, that we really have this sense of outrage, and it's not fair what's happening. There's a feeling of powerlessness, and we have these waves of like in 2020 after George Floyd was murdered, we have these waves of outrage. And then how do we continue that energy? How can we incorporate that into our lives in a way that's nourishing to us? I know from many years of working as an activist in the lesbian, feminist, anti-racist movements in Alberta in the late 70s and through the 80s and in the AIDS movement, there was a lot of fire and anger, and it can kind of burn us out. At that time, I didn't know anything about the nervous system. I just knew that I was enraged by the injustice. And so how can we stay engaged in social justice work throughout our lifetimes, knowing that it's going to be very different, but have that sense of we can do this and we can do it together. We're stronger when we do it together. This isn't a job for one person. So knowing this, we can't afford to disengage from working for justice. So when we feel overwhelmed, powerless, a lot of us just go unconscious. And we can see that through COVID. A lot of people started, sharing things about all the wine and having Zoom wine meetings, and a lot of people talking about the extra weight that a lot of people are carrying, the COVID weight. So it's really clear that when we feel overwhelmed and powerless and when we're afraid, we often get kind of immobilized. So when we look at the ventral vagal, the whole polyvagal system, we have the freeze at the bottom, and we need to come up out of freeze into sympathetic arousal, which is fight and flight. And then from there, we can come up into ventral vagal, which is that trust, connect. So what I'm suggesting is that one of the ways that we can come up out of freeze and not be like crazy fight, ranting kind of a response, but just to have a solid, engaged, this is not going to happen without a protest. This isn't right. I can see the intersectionality of everything, and I really need to do something. I've had many people this week say, I can't allow my daughters and granddaughters and nieces and nephews and all of the other people who are coming down to have fewer rights than we've had. How can we work with that in a way that keeps us engaged? Engaging with people in community, however it is a really effective way to do that. So let's spend some time here. So when we decide that we're going to be engaged, one of the things that very often happens is that we kind of give up. So I wanted to take a bit of time and sink into that for each of us. So when you think about, there's something going on in Nova Scotia. There was a park. There was a dirty back room deal around a park that was going to be turned into a golf course. And a group of people got together, and many hundreds of people and thousands of people here, and protested it. And in the end, that government was voted out, a new government was voted in, and they've just announced that it's going to be protected permanently as a park. So we can do this when we get together with other people, but we can't do it when we're on our own. And oftentimes, even though we know that, it's like, well, I really care about that issue, but we have this kind of feeling of anxiety, or we're too busy, we're too stressed. So what comes up for you when you think about the barriers or the obstacles for you personally in order to get engaged with something like that? Yeah, well, we'll come back to that too. So let's focus in on some of the options or opportunities. And I've listed some of them at the bottom. If we have a feeling of, I don't know that much about this, I'm afraid I'll feel stupid, then we can learn more. There's a lot of opportunity for that now in online or in person with somebody. We could go on a march. That's kind of an obvious thing to do for social justice, and it's very helpful. We could also do other things like mentor a teen or join a community association or an online group, donate money, campaign for a candidate. So maybe you don't want to run for office, but you could get involved in a campaign for a candidate that you believe in. And one of the things that happens when we do that is we meet other people who are like us, who have similar values to us. So let's take a bit of time here to really get engaged with what injustice makes you really angry. And so for especially Americans right now, reproductive freedom. What project makes you excited is another direction. Maybe somebody had dyslexia, and the idea of helping kids with their reading feels really exciting because then those children aren't going to suffer in the same way that we did. So, whatever it is that's going on, or maybe it isn't going on yet, but it's something you'd like to see go on, let's take a moment to let a few options scroll through. And as you're doing that, take a few breaths, relax your body, and notice your response. What makes you angry? What makes you excited? What might you get involved in? Keep an eye on what are the thoughts in your mind. Are you experiencing some obstacles? Like, what is some of the ones that are listed there? So we don't have to get rid of them, just to notice. What does it feel like in your body? We'll take another few minutes so we have a chance to kind of really feel into that. Notice if you're in a fight, flight response. Notice if you're feeling kind of overwhelmed and you've started to think about something else, or you're feeling kind of hopeless. Come back into regulation, take a few breaths, orient to the room. And now, the next part of the inquiry, we're going to really take one of those things, or maybe there was only one, maybe there were several, and go into it deeply. So, visualize it using all of your senses. But one of the reasons that we do this is because the nervous system and our primitive brain, our neuroception, our perception of danger and threat, is based on experience. So, if we've had experiences, and I think all of us could say we have, especially during COVID, but all the time, where we feel a little uncomfortable or maybe terrified about going into a group of people that we don't know. getting engaged with something, we really have that urge to do it, but we're just too scared, or we put it off and we're like, I don't really feel like I can do that right now because of this and this and this. And sometimes that's true. We have to kind of wait for a bit. So what we're doing here is we're giving our brain some different kind of evidence. So our brain doesn't actually know the difference between something that we visually, really using all of our senses, we bring to life, and something that actually happened. And we know that by all of the kind of the ways that our body responds with social anxiety. We're not actually in a dangerous situation, but just thinking about it, we get all revved up. So let's take this now, and whatever it is you chose, it doesn't have to be the perfect one, it could just be one that comes to mind. And let's take several minutes to bring that to life. So you're looking forward. So let yourself feel that this is something important to you. And see yourself as part of the group. So maybe you're sitting at a table giving out information or getting people to sign a petition. Or maybe you're at some kind of a speaker group. Whatever it is, maybe you've made that, sent that email, and now you're doing volunteer training to do something. Maybe you love to garden and you've got a community garden that you've engaged with the people and now you're there. So really see yourself doing that activity. And feel it in your body. Stay connected in your body with your breath. So there's several things that might be happening as you're doing this. One might be that you kind of can't settle on what action that you're thinking of doing. So if that's the case, just see if you can pick something that's not too terrifying, something that you are interested in though. I really care about this thing. This is something, maybe it's that I'm going to go onto a volunteer center and figure out what I could possibly do. But see yourself taking some kind of action. Another thing that might be happening is that your mind is bringing up all the obstacles. So you could notice those. And another way to work with this is to do it in small steps. So when I got involved in an amateur jazz band activity for seniors, it was a little bit intimidating for me to go. I hadn't played for a long time, since I was a teenager, really. And it was going to be all new people. And so when I thought about that, one of the things I did was I just kind of closed my eyes and I visualized making the phone call, getting to be part of the group, and then walking up to the building. So you could take those steps if you want. So there's a community group. You don't have anyone to go with because you don't know anyone else who's interested, but you're going to go and visualize yourself, getting ready to go. You get in the car, you're driving over there, however you get there. Bring it into little steps. Then you open the door and you walk in. And all the way through that, you could do some grounding and orienting practices. We're much more skilled now than we were at staying emotionally regulated, of having that steadiness in our body, our nervous system. So see yourself succeeding at this. One of the things that we do is we can breathe out longer, talk in longer sentences. You might see yourself going over to the table where the organizer is and saying, "Hi, I'm here because I care about this." Take some deep breaths. See yourself doing that. And then you see yourself a bit later, maybe later in the evening or a few weeks or months from now, where you're one of the people that people say hello to when you come in. Maybe you arrive with someone, you carpool with someone that you become friends with. You have that satisfaction of knowing I'm making a difference. And be careful for the inner critic. Well, you should have done this sooner, or what's the matter with you? That just tell it to shut up. We're not interested in that. Right now, we're just really getting into the felt sense. I've overcome my fight, flight, freeze. I'm taking action and I'm visualizing it. I can hear the sounds. Maybe if you're on a march, you can feel the sun on your face, or you can feel all the other people who care about the same thing, whatever it is that you're working with. Take another few minutes to really feel into that. Notice your breath in your body. What are the sensations in your body? And coming back to the prior one, notice if there's obstacles that you could work with. So, one of the things we could do is do some tapping if we have that feeling of, I'm afraid I'll feel stupid. And then our mind goes back to all the other times when we felt that way when we were a kid. We could do some tapping on that. We could put it in a frame. We could use all of those tools we have. And then we could come back into, I'm an adult now. And everybody who does this feels uncomfortable at first. And I care about this a lot, and I'm going to do it anyway. Let yourself feel that strength and resilience in your system. Because this is a fairly quick inquiry, you probably haven't come to a complete resolution of this, or maybe haven't even decided what it is you want to do. Just to know that we can come back to this as well. So I want to finish with this quote from Audre Lorde. When times are hard, do something. If it works, do it some more. And if it doesn't work, do something else, but keep going. When we have this feeling of there's something really important that's happening and I need to be part of fighting for social justice, then we need to take some kind of action. And doing that in community with other people is really helpful.